What's the dumbest rule your school ever enforced? My school had 3 staircases along a very long corridor. We were banned from using the middle staircase because it got overcrowded. The ban was lifted once they realized it only made the other 2 staircases just as crowded, not being allowed to wear hoodish jackets or sweaters that lacked the official school logo. I was a high school teacher for several years. Both buildings I worked in were freezing, and having admin pull students out of my classroom during a 50-minute period giving them detention instead of letting them learn is cruel and completely unnecessary, in my opinion. If you throw snowballs, you get a 1-day suspension. The first long weekend after a snowfall, everyone would throw snowballs to get an additional day added to the long weekend. You had to wear your ID around your neck on a rope thing. Then the choking started. Candy canes were outlawed because you could sharpen them to a point and use them as a shiv. I went to school in rural Washington. We were definitely weren't somewhere that shankings were to be expected. Properly motivated, one could make a shiv out of most things. At my kids' elementary school, students had to smile while walking in the hall. I got Saturday school for missing a day of classes when I was 16. Seems reasonable. Except I missed to go complete my citizenship and officially become a citizen alongside my mum. It took us 12 years to go through the legal process, BTW. Whole other issue. I had a note from my mother as well as a signed official federal form they give you to explain to school employers why you were absent. Apparently, the only acceptable absence excuse was illness. I got punished for becoming a citizen, and now you're one of us. Congrats. Edit to add, it's like that was the last part of your citizenship journey. Getting fucked BC of it. Elementary school principal banned talking at lunch. If you were caught talking or even signing to someone, you had to go sit by yourself on a folding chair with no table. There was once my mum came to eat lunch with my older sister and I. The principal was like, "Oh, you should go eat out in the hallway with your daughters," and she was like, "Nah, I'm gonna sit here with my daughter and her friends and talk to them and enjoy their presence." Usually if a parent came for lunch, the student could invite one friend to join. Unless you had siblings, then it was too many people, so you couldn't invite a friend. Anyway, one of my older sister's friends whispered to my mum that she was going to move so she wouldn't get in trouble for talking. This was a 9-year-old. My elementary school had those super long tables with little stools attached. Whenever a class got in trouble for being too loud during lunch, the punishment was that we had to sit every other seat. Even at like 7 years old, I was like, won't we just have to talk louder to hear each other if we're farther away? That if you side-o anything back to your bully, it becomes a mutual conflict and isn't bullying, so if they start calling you slurs and making you feel bad every day and you call them stupid once or twice, the school probably won't help. Also, dress code required school-branded hoodies. They were $50. If you wore a non-school hoodie, you got in-school suspension. That bullying rule sounds exactly like my old secondary school. Their policy was don't retaliate, just tell a teacher. I remember one time I had a cover lesson in the main hall, and for reasons unknown, the chief bully decided it was my turn to be in the spotlight. As we went in, he informed me that as soon as class ended, he was going to punch me in the face. Being the scared, bullied kid I was, I went straight to the teacher and asked if I could be excused a couple of minutes early to get to my next class whilst avoiding a fist in the face, which the teacher ignored. Cue end of class, I was punched as expected in front of said teacher. My mother was not amused in the least. I didn't find out until years later that she had been down to the school outside of ours berating various teachers for their abysmal efforts to combat the bullying, which did eventually die off. TLDR. Schools absolutely suck at combating bullying. My mother is awesome. After 9/11, my school instituted a zero-tolerance policy on bullying and violence. What 9/11 had to do with bullying, I don't know. Anyways, Halloween 2001, I dressed up as the guy from Clockwork Orange. He carries a cane around. The principal pulled me aside, told me walking around with a cane could be a weapon, therefore just walking with it is an act of violence, and suspended me for a couple of days, telling me that after 9/11, we don't mess around with that kind of stuff. Edit, this happened in Quebec, in a small town. The new principal made a morning roundup rule where anyone arriving to class after the last bell had to go to the cafeteria and listen to a lecture about not being late for class. This took about an extra 15 minutes, making the students even more late to class than they would have otherwise been. Needless to say, everyone hated it. Even the teachers. That principal didn't last long. Toilet paper rationing. This was in 199,798 BTW. Apparently, the high school girls' room was going through too much toilet paper, so the dean, a woman, stood outside the door and distributed a few squares of one-ply institutional toilet paper to us as we went in. If she noticed toilet paper on the floor, our ration got cut down. If we asked for more for bigger jobs, we were told to save it for home. There were several episodes of girls stuck in stalls until friends could beg for more TP because of period messes or unexpected bowel incidents. The dean wouldn't even hand it over. She would go in the bathroom and pass it a few squares at a time over the door. If you didn't catch it as it fell and it landed on the floor, well, that's your fault and you're not getting more. If you used more than she thought necessary, tough luck. Go to class with blood shit on your body. It took about a week of extremely angry parents coming to the school and calling both the school and the school board, but we finally got our toilet paper back. Unlimited. How did we celebrate? By TPing her car, of course. I was angry, but your celebration made this whole story worth it. If we didn't see it happen, it didn't happen. All it did was train bullies to be really good at keeping their voices down and being aware of their surroundings, so they could avoid doing shit within a teacher's line of sight. It meant if you were ever outside of a teacher's vision range, you were still fair game for heaps of abuse, and if you tried to report things that teachers didn't see, then the teachers treated you like you were making up bullshit. It also didn't stop teachers from enforcing double standards, like believing reports from their personal favorites even when they didn't see it happen, since they could just claim they saw it happen if it was contested. That school was basically a training facility to turn bullies into stealth experts. You can only use 3 squares of TP. I was sent to the principal in elementary school for getting a drink of water out of line, as in, we walked down the hall in a formation and we had designated water drinking stops. To this day, I still remember the principal asking angrily, well, what if everyone started getting water without permission? And I still don't have an answer. Well, all be hydrated? No beads. Apparently they thought bitted jewelry was gang-related. Nothing says hardened criminal like matching bead bracelets that say BFFs 3. You can tell who the gang leader is because he has the most charms on his Pandora bracelet. It wasn't really the rule that was dumb, but the reason for it. In my last year of high school, the school issued a rule that all students had to wear student IDs. If you didn't, you had to immediately go and pay for another ID. While you can see how many students may have saw this a way to skip class, the reason for this was the school shootings that happened the previous year. The reasoning was that it would be easier to spot who is a student and who is not a student to then see who has malicious intent, except that most shooters were students. So. Closing. Boys' toilets, because some cunt was stealing toilet paper. When school staff announced this stupid rule, some students actually threatened to shit on the tables. Then, we were not allowed to have facial hair at all, like to the point where the principal would walk around during lunch with razors and shaving cream and do stubble checks. Absolutely ridiculous. And he would send tons of us to the bathrooms to shave during lunch, no matter how small the stubble was. Pull up with no eyebrows. I got a suspension for holding a stick. The phone call with my mum went something like this, only slightly dramatized. School, Mrs. Thakek, your son has been suspended. Mum, oh my goodness, what did he do? S, he was holding a stick. M, did he hit someone with it? S, no, he was just holding it. M, did he threaten to hit someone with it? S, no, just held it. M, did he refuse to put it down when you asked? S, no, he was very cooperative. M, so, what did he do wrong? S, he held a stick. M, and I should be upset about that. S, absolutely, you know we have a zero tolerance policy. M, right, well, I'll talk with him. As you might guess, I did not get in trouble at home. He has a stick. Call the police. Razormine starts playing. Playing cards at lunch was prohibited because it promoted gambling. Went to school during the time where health and safety suddenly started going crazy. They introduced a no contact under any circumstances rule, i.e. no touching another person. We were like 6 or 7 years old. Suddenly one day, not only is tag suddenly illegal, but they actually enforced it. I remember one day like 70 of the school's population was pulled off of the playground and made to sit on the floor in the hall for the crime of just playing the games that children play. I remember in 4th grade, me and my friends would play tag every day during recess. But one day they made touching other people illegal because someone could get hurt. Our whole outside area had that playground padding. Everyone still played tag anyways, so they eventually got rid of the rule. My school was in a poor area of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Not a lot of schools here have money for anything. Because of a huge donation of books at the time I was in school, my school got an absurd number of books, including expensive ones. There were a few dumb rules, but the dumbest of them all. We basically couldn't touch the books in the library without permission. It might sound reasonable at first, but check this out. The library was huge and there were lots of books, including contemporary classics, non-fiction like The Last Problem, English literature like Infinite Jest, How to Kill a Mockingbird, and whatnot. Dude, there was so much there, that place was probably the most valuable place in the entire school. I mean, it was awesome. There were enough books there for each student to lend about 100 every day. Here's the problem. The library went all but untouched for the entirety of my time there. Why? The amount of work it took to read one of those books was ridiculous and pretty much made sure not a single student bothered to try. First, you couldn't take any of the books home, period. Forget the fact that they had your address and all your parents' info, so in the case that someone took it and didn't return it, they could just get it back. It had happened before, at least once before the rule was made. Second, you couldn't leave the library with them, no matter what. Third, if you wanted to read the book, you'd have to do it in the library at the lunch break, which was about 45 minutes. So unless you weren't hungry ever, you had only a few minutes to go to the library. It was only open for a few hours around the break and not at all at any other time. So unless you stayed there for hours until the break for the afternoon classes, you just wouldn't have another chance. Those hours around the break could be used for you to be tutored by a teacher, which almost never happened. Fourth, once you went through all of that, you could only read the book under the observation of the people that volunteered to work in the library for credit, which was never more than 2 or 3 people. Sometimes no one. Which means that if you got there and there were already 3 people there, forget it. Unless you were willing to read it standing up close to where the book was kept. And even then, they'd check on you every minute or so. Fifth, you couldn't get inside the library with a backpack with food. In groups, speaking, without the appropriate uniform, you couldn't get in with the gym one, for instance, with other books, earrings, necklaces, or anything that could make noise while you were walking. Some were reasonable, but the issue is that one simple mistake and you would get banned. Sixth, any banishment from it was permanent. I complained about it once in the second year and was never allowed inside ever again. I even tried to get some teachers to help me, but it didn't work. Seventh, and probably the dumbest, only the students that had a certain amount of high grades could get any book at all. If you got something like 410 on your last biology exam, you couldn't even get inside the library. The standard was so insane, only 6 other students and I in my classroom had enough good grades to get books. In all my time there, the library was basically deserted for the majority of it. I tried to go there many times, but it was too much work. Out of all the books, I only managed to read 2 Brazilian ones, A Guerra do Lanche, The Lunch War, and Blackout, Blackout, which I remembered to this day in details. There were times where I legit thought about straight up ditching class to read some of them. I tried to get more, like The Last Problem, Kafka's Metamorphosis, Ulysses, which I know I wouldn't have been able to do it, but I was just curious. A Brief Story of Time, Wuthering Heights, etc. But the amount of work it took was so much that it was just almost impossible to be able to read more than 1 or 2 books a year, and even that took dedication, because I basically had to sacrifice part of my lunchtime. The rumor was that the principals we had more than one basically saw us as savages who would destroy the books if we were allowed to touch them, and even though they had no reason to believe so, the library worked well without those restrictions a year. Before I had gotten there, with only minimal incidents, and even those didn't result in the books getting destroyed. TLDR. My school made it very hard to read the huge amount of books they had. This isn't a rule. Homies made a full-on constitution for the library. Have bad grades? No reading for you. In grade school, we weren't allowed to play on the playground equipment when it snowed. Eventually, we weren't allowed to play with snow or even go near it. I got in trouble for sitting in snow. This was in Minnesota, where it snows half the year. Recess basically consisted of milling around the blacktop for 30 minutes. Can't be standing around in groups more than 4, gang mentality. My gang of 4 found that policy very convenient. Reminds me of the time a teacher absolutely lost her shit because my friend said something like, "Come on, gang." She was convinced she caught a slip up and that she was about to expose some serious 8th grade gang activity. Or they watched Scooby-Doo. When I was kid, I mimicked keeping it real from the Scooby-Doo live action movie, and my teacher thought my friend and I were making fun of her somehow and tried to ban us from that night school fair thing. I went anyway. Our school had a rule against colored shoelaces because of gang affiliation. Oh man, I forgot about all the gang affiliation stuff. We weren't allowed to wear sports jerseys, or the colors blue, red, or purple. I lived in a podunk rural town of 12,000 people and there wasn't a whole lot of Latin Kings recruiting going on. Banned all backpacks bags on campus. Students were expected to somehow carry everything they needed in hand. This was especially challenging if you had a non-ideal locker placement. Ours did this too because in college they won't let you carry your bags everywhere. Fucking liars. College professors don't give a shit. Brew. You can show up to college in pajamas and they won't even blink or ask a question, but they think they wouldn't allow backpacks. We had to sign a waiver before prom stating we wouldn't dance dirty. No one went to prom. We once had a rule that we could only go to the bathroom during class, not in the breaks, only during class. Really weird that this is the reverse of most bathroom policies being brought up here. Was there a reason for it? Probably to prevent gathering. If during class, most students would be in class and the staff would know who was in bathroom at what time. Locked the only boys' bathroom because someone wrote on the wall in Sharpie. It wasn't even anything rude or inappropriate either. It was just the word hi or something like that. Didn't unlock the door until one boy wet himself and parents threatened to sue. That kid really sacrificed himself for everyone else. A small price to pay for salvation potty break. You have to wear your tie all the way home. Some sad bastard teachers would stand on the main road away from the school and try to hand out detentions in presumably their own time. Why even do this? You're not even in the school property. I know. It was a shit school as well, only like 50 of people graduated with 5 CS. I mean, sure, their fucking faculty is standing outside off-school premises mandating articles of clothing. Even a tenth of that concentrated effort on something constructive could be so helpful to children that need help. What morons. I got in trouble for humming to myself in the bathroom and told I was disturbing another class. What was the entire class outside his door listening to you? Don't play on the golf course. Our tiny community got a burst of cash in the 70s due to having mineral rights on land with oil. It was amazing some of the things we had access to for a school in the plains in Montana: computer lab, ceramics, photography, and a freaking laser. They also bought the grade school a miniature golf course in the center of the playground. A majority of the playground was concrete squirrels, turtles, and a whale. These looked like a lot of fun to play on for a kid. We couldn't touch them. We couldn't get near them. We couldn't land our Star Wars figures on them, incorporate them in our games in any way, or even walk near them when running from someone playing tag. Once in PE, we got out the clubs and played a few rounds in my entire time in school. Other classes never even got that. After about 30 years, during a student clean-up, they got some of the upper-level high school kids to take hammers to them and pulverize them. Don't let your underwear show. This was directed at the girls when Madonna was in fashion. One school official went to war on visible bra straps. While no girls even attempted copying Madonna, this official was making a preemptive attack. She made announcements and would bust girls in the halls. About this time, the varsity boys basketball team got new uniforms. Rather than spend money on the other teams, their old uniforms were given to the junior varsity girls team. Jerseys with huge arm and neck holes made for 17-year-old boys were now being worn by 15-year-old girls. Girls that were as active as possible and in public. If they'd pose for a picture, you could almost not see their bras. While playing, the front of the jerseys flopped from side to side. At least one cup would be visible at any time. Suddenly, girls' basketball got a lot more popular. That's a load of crap. They never let you touch them. Then down the road they demolished them? That sucks for you. The laser part sounds really cool though. I would love to have one of those at my school. They outlawed bracelets because there was an article in a magazine somewhere saying they advertised what sexual acts you were open for based on their color. Then someone tried to outlaw wristwatches for the same reason. We had the bracelet rule too for the same reason. Not really a rule. but the toilet paper holders are outside of the stalls on a wall. So you have to calculate before taking a shit how much you need and hope that it was enough. Just means that if someone starts a fight with you, you fight back as hard as you can. You're going to get suspended for defending yourself anyway. Might as well make it worthwhile. This was the dumbest rule ever. Someone sucker punched me and ran away. It was all caught on camera. I reported it. I got a week of in-school suspension under zero tolerance. I should have just chased the kid down and beat the shit out of him, because then I would have gotten out of school suspension at least. This was ridiculous at my school. A friend who was a fellow AP student got suspended for 10 days because she got punched by some girl that had an issue with her. Didn't matter that she didn't touch the other girl. That tons of people witnessed it. Her parents were so mad. But she's a doctor now, so she managed. We weren't allowed to wear thongs. I don't know how they caught people who did TBH. For a while, it was a fad to leave them purposefully visible under low-rise jeans. My friend is an administrator at a private school in NJ, and the faculty has to sign in and out of the bathroom using Google Sheets. That's barely enough time for a good cry. Girls weren't allowed to show their ankles. The dean had a pack of socks in her office she would give the students and make them wear. Only girls, though. This was the 2000s. Someone stop those animals. They're showing their ankle. Sir, there's 7-year-old girls. So many. You weren't allowed to wear a coat or a backpack, always freezing with tons of books. No card games at all. 5 minutes between classes, sprawling one-story building, barely leaves time to pee. No slow dances at the prom. What kind of music did they play? I imagine Cotton Eye Joe was on repeat. Many years ago when The Simpsons first came out, my school banned Bart Simpson t-shirts that said underachiever. It just sent the wrong message to students, so I wore my I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you t-shirt instead, until they banned that one too. Rule: no duct tape on clothing. Reason: some girls thought they could get past the no rip jeans rule by covering the tears with duct tape. It became a fad and everyone started doing it, so it got banned. A kid in my AP literature class found a loophole and made an entire outfit out of red and black duct tape. I mean shorts, a shirt and a jacket and shoes. When the school tried to suspend him, they couldn't because the rule was no duct tape on clothes. It said nothing about clothes made out of duct tape. He won the argument and even wore the outfit a few more times to say fuck you to the school and principals. Lol. Edit. This is it. This is as popular as I'll ever be. Take that, principal, Conrad. Really though, to answer a regularly asked question, ripped jeans were an issue because they made the school look trashy, not because they showed skin. However, there were many other rules to enforce. No excessive skin be shown. We would get suspended for rips in our clothes and also for duct tape on clothes, both for the same reason. It was trashy LMAO. At my school, duct tape was the de facto punishment for having large holes in your pants. Holes were allowed providing they were not on the inner thigh and were less than 4 inches in diameter. I was wearing a regulation uniform jacket in a classroom during winter that had no heating. The teacher demanded I remove my jacket, and I refused because I was cold. She sent me to the head mistress. When I was in junior school, UK boarding school in the 80s, we were not allowed to say okay, as it was considered slang and not befitting the young ladies and gentlemen that we should aspire to be. For context, junior school covered ages 5–13. We also had to have a comb and a handkerchief on us at all times. On top of that, we weren't allowed to have our hands in our pockets because it looks slovenly. What Victorian boarding school did you go to? No shit, for some reason I immediately picture this school having harpsichord as a mandatory class. After 911, they made us wear school IDs on our shirt or hanging from a lanyard around the neck. For some reason they decided it would be smart to also put each student's medical history on the back. Mine just had nosebleeds written in cursive. If you were caught on your phone, they'd take it until the end of the week. You'd get it back at 3:30 on Friday. Parents went mental and a few even came together and sent bills through for part of the phone bills. They ditched that rule after 2 weeks. Edit. Phones were kept overnight in the school in the office until that Friday if they were confiscated. No safe or anything, just in a plastic box. No, getting it back at the end of the day. You just had to go for days without a phone, even at home. Just in case there's any confusion around that lol. We had to pay $5 at the end of the day to get our phones back from the office after they got taken. Most teachers would just give it back at the end of class, but the asshole teachers loved turning them into the office. No unnatural hair colors, except for Lily, who dyed her hair the school color maroon. It was dark enough to argue it was a weird red-brown, but it was clearly maroon. And I think she got away with it because it was school spirit. Dildos were banned. The school never thought they would have to print those words. You would think it was a given, until a senior bought 100 dildos and snuck them around the school every day for 2 weeks straight. I love how utterly weird some kids can be. Girls must have a male escort them to prom as their date. If your date bails, you can't enter. We were an all-girls school. Many of us had 0 guy friends. Finding dates was hard. I remember one year a girl's boyfriend dumped her when everyone was starting to show up for photos. She showed up at the venue, mascara running, begging the principal to let her go in. Principal wouldn't let her. One of the senior homeroom teachers ended up calling her nephew and said, "I need you to put on your suit and get here ASAP." He showed up with flowers and everything. So, it was salvageable but totally avoidable. The worst part? It wasn't always a rule. Until one year a group of girls went as friends and kept stealing other people's dates. Way to punish everyone forever because of one group of bitches. Wow. It must have been expensive to have that many prostitutes at one prom. In high school, hair length on men and stubble. Look, a bunch of 15 to 16-year-old guys are going to have a bit of stubble no matter how thoroughly we shave. Forcing us to go to the principal's office to dry shave nearly daily is fucking absurd. All boys school with those same rules. One day I was in class and my teacher sent me to the dean for not shaving. I had stubble and am a hairy guy who's had facial hair since like 7th grade. My friend defended me saying I shaved this morning and showed the dean a Snapchat screenshot of me with shaving cream on half my face from that morning. That teacher did not like me, lol. We were not allowed to put our coats on until we were outside. During winter, when we would have a storm, we had to go outside in the rain to put our coats on or face receiving a detention if we put them on in the corridor. A kid went to the hospital after falling from a wall. Then the school painted yellow lines around the school as a border, which the kids weren't allowed to cross. So the teachers had to stand guard and make sure no one crossed it. Yo-yos. Somehow it became a thing in high school and, well, eventually they got banned. Dumbest rule, 0 tolerance for fighting. This meant both the kid who started the fight and the kid who got beat on were both suspended. If the kid who got beat on just took it, he was just sent home for the rest of the day. If he dared to fight back, he was suspended for a week, just like the kid who started the fight. Here's the truly stupid part. The school administrators couldn't explain how this led to more brutal fights. It's stupid. I got bullied a lot and almost got suspended because I was making trouble and getting into fights. Why are you punishing me for getting bullied? I legit was minding my own business, and people started harassing and beating me, and I literally didn't fight back. God, I am still get angry about that. Still angry that she also lied to my dad and said I was the one who started it all. Then he proceeded to ground and beat me, and she knew that what's going to happen. You could see her face of disgust when looking at me. Why? Why? Is getting bullied by my classmates not enough? Fucking hell. If you're going to get in trouble anyway, make it worth your while, LMAO. My friend nearly got suspended for wearing a trench coat. It was the late 90s. Probably didn't help that he had long hair, was shy, and weird. My school had a rule against trench coats, but it was never specific, so at one point my brother got a new winter coat and it happened to be long and they wouldn't let him wear it because they classified it as a trench coat. I don't think it helped he also had long hair and was a loner. No fighting, enforced by punishing the kids who were getting hit. Yep, I literally was walking down the hall in junior high, minding my own business, and some guy who I now suspect had some mental health issues and or abuse at home just laid into me with a series of punches for no reason. A teacher pulled him off me before I could even react. Imagine my surprise when I found out I was suspended too, even though I hadn't done anything other than get assaulted. I don't understand what that's supposed to teach kids. Luckily for me, my dad thought it was bullshit too and came and picked me up from school and said just treat today like it's a day off. You deserve it. Came here to say this. The 0 tolerance policy is insane. Imagine this was applied to the real world. Oh, your husband beat you? Both of you can enjoy years in prison. What's that? Mass shooter injured 12 people? We're gonna need a bigger prison. Got mugged in the alley? Believe it or not, prison. There was a girl in my school who thought it was absolutely hilarious to walk up to random guys and just full force kick them in the nuts without warning. She did it maybe 3 to 4 times. She did it to my friend, and on the way to the ground, he pushed her away. She immediately starts screaming, and when the principal was informed of the situation, he suspended both of them for the same length of time. For reference, he ended up needing a surgery to fix the damage and has a much reduced fertility as a grown man, which he only just found out about now that he is trying to have kids with his wife. In high school, the supervisor told the prefects and head girls to break up girls hugging in the hallways. I went to an only girls' school and teachers discouraged girls from hugging each other. Apparently they thought that it encouraged lesbianism. SMH, the most sexual act. They banned plain red and plain blue shirts. No hot drinks. Rumors said it was because the principal burnt himself while drinking something, so he banned it. LMAO, if that is true, is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. My high school decided to ban women's athletic shorts one day, which was ridiculous for many reasons. The next day, every girl showed up in athletic shorts. The rule was removed by second block. We had a uniform and generally had non-uniform days once a month. As long as your clothing was reasonable for school, they didn't say much until one time in May or June they said no shorts allowed on non-uniform day despite us actually having uniform shorts. It was like 34 degrees Celsius that day and 90 of the school were shorts. They sent everyone home and it basically was like a nothing day because teachers didn't want to waste their time teaching to students the lesson they'd have to repeat the next day. My high school principal was a stickler for the dress code rules. Mostly for girls, of course. She would stand in the hallway and just look for violations. If your shorts were shorter than your fingertips, you had to go change. Yet cheerleaders were allowed to wear their cheer uniforms, which were very short skirts. No hate on those girls, but how is that fair? The exact same thing happened at my school. You weren't allowed things like chocolate bars or basically any unhealthy snack in your lunchbox, but they then sold double chocolate chip cookies and ice buns in the canteen. Students must keep their hair short. This rule was heavily enforced at my school. If your hair was too long, the teacher would cut a line down the middle of your head with a pair of scissors, so you have no choice but to get a haircut. This was only for boys, by the way. I went to a Christian school for a bit. They didn't like the argument that I shouldn't have to shave or cut my hair since Jesus didn't. My high school had that rule. One of my friends refused to cut his hair and got sent to the principal because his hair was over his ears. Came back the next day shaved like a skinhead. He said she threatened to have Father Jim cut my hair if I don't get it cut. No fucking way am I getting touched by a priest. One particular professor at my university would lock the door a minute after class began. If you had to leave to go to the bathroom, you couldn't get back in. Somehow this ancient fossil is still teaching and pulling similar shit. Had the same professor for 3 different classes that did basically this. He would shut the door and pull the window shade down as soon as the clock struck, whatever time the class started. Anyone that came in after that, he would write their name down and mark them late. 3 lates and your grade would be dropped. A whole letter grade from an A to B, C to D, etc. It was a stupid rule because my college campus was very spread out, so if you were someone that had back-to-back classes all over campus, you would almost guaranteed to be late. I'm pretty sure he was forced to stop doing that because there was a semester where half the class was failing just because they were late one too many times. Girls were not allowed to wear cycling shorts under their PE skirts. They wanted us to wear these dark green PE pants, basically just underwear, and it was gross. My year protested. We said shorts or nothing, and they backed off. This was 20 years ago, and it's totally different now. Girls wear what they want for PE. My primary school had this weird obsession with safety. When we played dodgeball, the boys had to throw with their non-dominant hand while the girls got to throw full force, and we could get detention for going where the teachers couldn't see us. But the worst rule by far was that we weren't allowed to run on the playground. I'll never forget the time my teacher literally said, "The playground is no place to run." Lucky to be the ambidextrous kid during dodgeball. You could only go to the bathroom twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. Mind you, this is from 8-3 and you had to get a new pass every week and keep it the whole time or you couldn't use the bathroom. Edit, this was Prec 8th grade. We actually had a dealer who would make fake passes, so they had to start color coding them. They got rid of this rule a month before I graduated. Edit 2, my new high school has a just go policy and they have no issues. I'm loving it lol. Edit 3 lol. They actually encouraged drinking water at least half your body weight crap and would have times to drink water from the many water fountains. The hypocrisy, L. No farting in class. They would say if you need to fart then go to the toilet, but then 9 times out of 10 if you asked to go to the toilet they'd say no. Fart loudly to assert dominance. Clear liquids only. Some kid brought in Gatorade mixed with alcohol of some sort, so in effort to combat it afterwards, they wanted us to only drink clear liquids out of clear containers. As if vodka and white rum don't exist. We weren't allowed of personal drinks in classroom unless we had doctor's note. No leaving the dorm unless it's for a fire alarm. I went to boarding school from the age of 7. That rule meant we couldn't get out of our dormitory to have a wee in the night. We had a plastic tub one of the girls brought in and went in that. Then we had to smuggle the tub to the bathroom in the morning without matron seeing. Stupid bloody rule. Edit, everyone is saying pee out the door or pee on the floor. Just imagine the punishments we got for misbehaving. Doing anything against matron would have never crossed our minds. Also, this was 80 seconds, early 90s. Southern England. Our punishments were pretty awful, but I survived. We all did. I'm still in touch with some of the girls I boarded with back then. We have our scars, but we're a tough lot. Second edit, Dad was in the army and they moved around a lot, so being sent away was for stability and consistency. Textbook checkouts were an absolute shit show. They were assigned entirely by number and condition. They were not assigned to a specific student. As long as you turned in a textbook at the end of the year and the textbook number was on the list, that was the first step to being okay. The second step was condition. The textbooks were graded as new, good, fair, and poor. If the book was returned in a lesser condition than when it was checked out, you had to pay for a new textbook. This included condition changes from new to good, yet we almost never got new textbooks. The ones we had were usually around 10 years old, so they went through at least 3 condition changes over their lifespan. It was pure extortion. You had to pay for the textbook at the end of the year, and if you didn't, they'd keep you from advancing. So that sucks, right? That compounded with another stupid rule we had. Lockers were not allowed to be locked. In fact, our lockers didn't even have a latch. They were just painted wood doors that were really just poorly installed flaps that would hang open. This was ultimately so the cops could check everyone's lockers for drugs. But it led to another issue, stolen textbooks. So the textbooks were generally falling apart and we were expected to both keep them with us for class and also bring them home with us for homework. We also didn't want them stolen, so most students kept them in their backpacks constantly. For every class. This was a rural school too, so most students had a decent walk home even from bus stops. Mine was about a mile. Point being, the textbooks were abused, as were our backs and backpacks. So you start with a poor condition textbook and add the extra wear and tear, and it's just a matter of time before the cover rips off. So those with shit textbooks would just grab one from whatever exposed locker had one, as long as the student was in the same class as you. It's fair game. In case you were wondering where the money went, it went into new awnings every year for the exterior doorways and into our famously bad football team. Our girls' teams were a bunch of champions and never got and respect for it. The school only cared about our shitty football team. They would go entire seasons without a single win. I got detention for pooping more than 10 minutes, but I have served stomach cramps and I asked why and they had no answer. Got chastised once by a female teacher in front of the entire classroom because I was late to return to class. She accused me of visiting other classrooms. Talking to my friends, said she was going to ask every other teacher in the school where I had been and who had seen me. I kept telling her over and over that no, I was just in the bathroom. She didn't believe me. I very loudly explained the truth where pretty much everyone could hear, since everyone already heard her accusing me that I was on my period, and shoved TP up my hatchet wound because I didn't have a tampon, but if she likes, I can pull it out to prove it. Shut her up pretty fucking fast. You had to have black shoelaces. No dark blue, no white, no grey, only black. There was also the rule your tie had to be a minimum length. So sometimes one of the assistant head teachers would come in and measure the length of your tie with a ruler. It was a year-long battle. It showed that the administration wasn't all that smart in wording rules. First was no gang clothing. Not one person admitted it was for a gang. People just happened to like a certain team. Second was no hats unless religious. You would have never guessed that so many became religious overnight. Finally, no head coverings. That one finally stuck, but it wasn't without issue. Try telling the valedictorian that her head covering wasn't allowed. P.S. Everyone liked her and we all had her back when it came time. Guys were free to wear pants in cold days, but girls had to wear a skirt no matter how cold it was. On the flip side, I went to a school in South Texas, very hot, where girls could wear khakis pants or skirts, but boys could only wear khakis. Shorts were not allowed for boys. As someone who extremely prefers cold weather and cannot tolerate anything above 78 F, that was torture.